The next thing you do, and I know I'm jumping ahead here because a lot of people are back at the beginning going, what you did, where did you start? You have to build up some skills. You have to work out where to mark. You can see there's a side fin just will be placed just there. You can see some more detail will be placed just there. And what you do is, you know, when you get your templates out of cardboard or tracing paper, you keep transferring all that detail as you go, and you know that piece of detail there might end up being that piece of detail there made out of balsa wood, which is just a strip trimmed down. One way of finishing that is adding polyfiller and sanding it, or you could wrap different sizes of sheets of styrene around it, or plasticard, as I've done with this whole model, which is actually quite thick plasticard because it's quite a straight and smooth surface. If I wanted to wrap this top of the submarine, I'd use a much thinner plasticard that sort of goes around 90% of the way, and then do it from the other side, and then what you end up doing is putting some polyfiller to sort of flatten it out. So the basis for any model, is to end up with a surface as smooth as possible. Now, the thing is with, say, this plane, there's a percentage. If you look at that wing, it has thickness. If you see the reflection on there, nothing's really perfect. In fact, it's got a finish on it that's just a little bit shiny, a little bit pitty. There's pits in it here and there. It's by no means perfect. I mean, I could have worked on this model for months, but the reality is, as on the show, some of the bigger models, are done and they're very tidy. Some of the models are done quite rough, and they can hide that with by dirtying it up if they've got a little dent or an imperfection, rather than keep working on it until it's absolutely perfect, because something plain like this could probably end up just blowing up after the first few scenes. So it all depends on what they're using it for. For me, I sort of copy that strategy. I don't make models to the perfection all the time, of absolute perfection. As long as you get the shape right, most of the detail correct, to a point where I'm happy with it, into the cabinet it goes. Now, the interesting thing about this model is, when you see these models on screen, they're only done one side, and obviously they're much bigger. This model would have been, this is about 12 or 13 inches, this model would have been 3, 4, 5 feet, I can't remember. So you've got to get all that detail scaled down, which is very hard. So, I tend to do lots of panel lines, because if I didn't do all those panel lines, it would look very, very boring. You go, oh yeah, that's the plane from Joe 90, but it doesn't have the realistic look that the full-size model will have. And also, with a lot of the vehicles and planes from the original models, studio models, if you look underneath, they're pretty unfinished. So I have that strategy as well sometimes, depending on what the model is. So if we take a look at this one, I think I might have said that there's actually a flap missing on the runway. The runway is just, landing gear is just held in basically with a couple of pins, glued in. The wheels are just made out of tubing, white tubing that's cut, glued together, and little inserts of other tubing and painted silver. But really, there's really not much to underneath this plane. I haven't got holes or recesses for the landing gear. It's just painted black. If you're looking at this model is actually getting quite old. It's got a few dents in it from being moved around a lot. But if you look at the landing gear and the white powder stuff, that's actually because a lot of my models had to be double-sided down in transportation. I couldn't wrap them, so I put them in these containers over here, and I put double-sided tape on them. I can get that off, but I don't need to at this point because it sort of adds to the look of the plane. But this one needs a little bit of repair. But as you can see, the underneath is quite a detailed and tricky shape, and the only way I could work that out is by the side shots. So the way it works underneath is pretty much guesswork. The way it thins out like a surfboard in the center, surfboard at each ends and a thinner piece in the center, I worked out by reflections on the studio model flying through the air. As you can see, some of the reflections here side on, you can sort of tell the shape. So it really is, when you get to that point where it's not, say, a wing or a square shape or just the nose, it's something complicated like that, and you're not sure what to do, it's literally whittling it down with a knife. And in this case, that's because of its ergonomic finish. It's not you can't plasticard over the top of it. And the idea of plasticarding something is just to give it a really quick finish rather than having to sand and fill. And it works especially well on the areas like the squared off areas at the top, the sides, and obviously there's plasticard in the wing. Now these wings are made up of 3 pieces of plasticard, one through the center that's quite strong, and then a couple of spaces, and then a very thin plasticard over the top and over the bottom of each wing, creating that thickness at each end. So if you look at it, it has, depth. That's not shaped and sanded, that's just plasticard bent and glued down. The only filling and sanding I've had to do is around the edges of the wing. So I hope you understand what I mean by that. Similar with the tail. There's something like the top rockety looking part there is literally from a rocket part. It pays to collect lots and lots of stuff from model shops on special, like you get those packets of military, rockets and missiles that come off jet planes and stuff. They come in really handy. You have a whole bunch of them. You'll eventually find one out of your collection drawer, parts, that is this size or this size. There's not really much more to say other than on this model, other than most of the models I do, and you can see when I start to put quite a bit of light on this, there's all the detail, including the windows, is painted on. You see a bit of rough reflection. This thing's been beaten up a little bit, but that's okay. You'll see that on some of the models on the show. Not necessarily the prime models, like say in Captain Scarlet, the SPV or the Thunderbird models that were made by, the model shop that did the aircraft. They weren't done by Jerry and Derek Medding and Mike Trim's model shop. They were done elsewhere to a high standard for the main craft. Mind you, saying that, I think Mike Trim worked on this model. I'm not sure, but and once I got to Joe 90, the quality did go up, so I'm not 100% sure where the original studio model was made. But in most of the series, the key models like the Joe 90 car and what have you were done, by a professional airplane modelling company, and a lot of the guest vehicles and smaller models and vehicles were made by Derek Meddings and his team. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you get a varying quality of models on the show depending on what they're used for. And it is very hard to make a small model like this and get it 100% perfect, especially with balsa wood, because what you're looking at on a lot of these curves are literally a curved piece of plastic on the balsa wood, and then another curved piece of plastic that has to stop here, and then the rest is literally shaped with a knife, which is a hard thing to do. So, as you can see, it's very similar on this submarine. You can get all these nice straight bits and go over the balsa wood shaped parts with plasticard. But once you get to the tip, you really have to start sanding and filling, and that's the tricky part of this sort of scratch building. So I'm going to leave that this episode right here. because this gives you an idea of, or partial idea of a couple of stages, a finished stage of a model and a part-way through stage. And then the submarine, which I showed you, is sort of an in-between stage. Unlike a lot of people, I'll work on a model, then get bored, start on another one, and then come back to it. In this particular case, I haven't worked on either of these for probably a year. So yeah, let's just take one last look at the Air Sirenian plane and its detail. Not a lot to it. I use metallic paint on this because I just wanted it to sort of kick out a little bit. In reality, the paint job on the studio model was metallic, I think, but a little bit more dulled down than this. But yeah, I tried to get as much pencil detail there as possible, and I just use black markers, 0.1mm, usually a mix of permanent markers or temporary markers. And the permanent markers will be good for the lines that you want permanent, and the other ones you'll just use to smudge, create a bit of weathering effect. And that's pretty much what I do with these. I weather them with permanent markers, or markers that are not permanent, but believe it or not, even a non-permanent marker will dry out, so it gives you a chance to put some dirt or blackness on there, smudge it on, and obviously within a day or so, if you rubbed it, it'll come off. But after a week or 2 weeks, that'll stay there. Now this one doesn't have a lot of smudging, to be honest, pretty clean. But when it comes to the dirtier models, that's what I do. If it's a ground vehicle, then it's going to have more than just a black smudge. It's going to have dirt on it, which is another way of weathering. So we're going to leave it there, and I will get back to you and we'll be talking again.